And there you are. And a very good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on the nose here on Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. It's the 25th of March, 2022. Welcome to the show. I'm live from California, Los Angeles. And you can be live from wherever you choose to be. So very pleased to kind of know that you're here and that you're kind of part of the show and that you're, looking forward to hopefully spending a couple of hours with us discussing the news, looking at things happening around the world, and just kind of getting your feet under the table, is the way I like to put it. You can wake up your Echo show, say the word say, then your message, and talk to me directly. You can also follow the show on YouTube if you go to the YouTube channel, and we've also got access via... It's kind of a web chat thing. It's called Backchannel.tv. Stacey's straight in from Texas. Good morning. Rosa, Karimus, London as well. Thank you for joining Backchannel this morning. And let's spend a couple of hours in each other's company. Now, a few of the things that we're going to be looking at today, which I thought we might kind of give a little mention to. The billionaire, Mackenzie Scott, giving $436 million for U.S. affordable housing. She is, of course, the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos. I think she kind of quietly remarried and is having a very nice time of it. She's definitely the good one. It just gives all the money away. Grocery stores struggling to supply Totino's and Pillsbury. We'll look at that. 11 simple ways to soften the blow of high gas prices on your road trip. Apart from buying an electric car, of course. And global happiness levels in 2022. We're going to look at that. And also maybe, if there's time, we'll look at why the global oil market hinges on 5 U.S. counties. But first, let's take a look at some of the morning papers together and see what's happening across the country. The Boston Globe is where we're going to start this morning. They lead with Joe Manchin saying he'll back Katangi Brown Jackson for Supreme Court. I mean, it's crazy that it's even a consideration that the guy wouldn't, Why wouldn't he? I mean, I appreciate that he's a dissenting Democrat who's admitted to being a conservative, but still remains a Democrat. But he's backed all of Biden's judicial nominees so far, and he said he would continue to do so in the case of Katangi Brown Jackson. So I don't quite know why it's newsworthy, because the problem is if you put, him on the front of the Boston Globe and say, ooh, he's going to back Katangi Brown Jackson, all you're doing is just playing into Joe Manchin's plan, his delight of remaining in the headlines. Drives me crazy. Also, Biden in Poland salutes U.S. troops. He will meet Ukraine refugees, it says. President Biden visited U.S. troops stationed near Poland's border with Ukraine on Friday and was getting a first-hand look at the growing humanitarian response to the millions of Ukrainians who are fleeing to Poland to escape Russia's assault on their homeland. He made an announcement today, actually. It's probably too late for the Boston Globe. But basically, he is going to work with Europe to export oil and gas from America so that Europe doesn't have to rely so heavily on Russia, which is very interesting. A demographic perfect storm. Suffolk County had one of the steepest population declines in the U.S., according to census data. Some parents are pinning their hopes on Moderna's vaccines for kids younger than 6. Yeah, I mean, I think this is great. I'll be honest. I have a little boy, and I would love him to get the Moderna vaccine, so that's hopefully going to be a thing, because it's children aged 6 months to 5 years, so he'll fall into that category, which is great. What else do we have here? Anything? That's kind of the Boston Globe done, I think. There it is. Okay, let's go to the Times Herald next and see what's happening there. They lead this morning with Michigan's bald eagle face threat from lead poisoning. Yeah, I mean, that's a terrible thing, isn't it? People don't realize how the water being contaminated can affect wildlife. Humans might be able to deal with it, but wildlife, not so much. So it's just something to consider. And what else do we have here? Let's have a little scroll down. Hungry goats stopping traffic to help with California wildfire prevention. Hundreds of goats were brought in to help California wildfire prevention by chewing up overgrown grass and weeds. That is a great idea. Isn't that the greatest? I mean, using natural resources. Because Donald Trump famously, do you remember when he went to see the forest fire or the effects of the forest fire on a town called Paradise in California, which he couldn't remember the name of and referred to it twice as Pleasure, which is completely disgusting. He said, "You don't clean your floors." Did this kind of motion. He said, "You don't clean your floors." Well, whoever referred to the ground in the forest as the floor, I don't know. I mean, he's clearly only ever used to being indoors. And secondly, cleaning. What does he want to do? Like get a bunch of cleaners to come and clean the floors? You're talking about hundreds of thousands of acres of land. So yeah, I mean, the right thing to do is have goats and get their chewing on. Get a chew on, goats. Avian influenza confirmed at St. Clair County, southeast Michigan. That's nice. That's basically bird flu. 2 dead, 3 critically injured in a 2-vehicle crash, and that's kind of it really for the what is it? Oh, the Times Herald. There we go. Yeah. All right. Next. Oh, Keisha's here. Hello, Keisha. Welcome from New York. Simple Chipmunk is in as well. Stacey is saying having hungry goats chew off the grass from all over the world is a great idea. And Maddox as well. So this is great. Wonderful. Okay, let's jump on to another newspaper, because that's what we need right now. The Helen Air Independent Record. They lead with "On the ground, fatherless children, a painful reality for war in Ukraine," is the headline. And it's talking about a civilian soldier fighting for his homeland in Kiev. The painful reality of war, fatherless children, and a young widow. I mean, they're saying that 1,000 civilians have died now. 1,000 civilians. Candidate list set for school board elections in Helena, and test runs of MT's new election system to begin with the 2022 primaries, and jury awards Great Falls woman $75,000 in excessive force case. So there we go. That's how that paper leads this morning. Oh, judge halts immigration policy challenged by MT, AZ, and OH. So there we go. Yeah, that's that one. Let me just get through these, because then we can move on to something else. San Antonio Express News. This is for Stacey, obviously. This might be the most iconic image, it says, of Katangi Brown Jackson's confirmation hearings. Is the headline. And it's a beautiful photograph of her daughter looking across at her. Her daughter's name is Layla. And it says, one of the most widely viewed images of Judge Katangi Brown Jackson's Supreme Court confirmation hearings was captured on Wednesday by photojournalist and Oakland's native, Sarah Beth Maney, whose photograph of Jackson's daughter and husband looking on lovingly during the intense, politically charged proceedings has resonated deeply with thousands on social media. Yeah. Maney, a former Chronicle intern now working as a photography fellow for the New York Times, is known for her intimate photo projects, including one that followed a San Francisco mother giving birth in the midst of the pandemic. Her photos capture personal moments that allow the viewer to peer into other emotions and convey stories with a single shot. Anyway, it's a lovely picture of Jackson, slightly blurred with a beaming smile, as her daughter Layla, who remains in focus, looking at her mother in adoration. And Layla's curls run down the side of her face, framing her affectionate grin, it says. What a beautiful family. It's so cute. Love it. So there we go. That's the San Antonio Express News. There's a photograph of the photographer as well, Sarah Beth Maney, taking the picture with her long lens. It's so good. Okay, what else is on the front of the San Antonio Express News this morning? Anything that's of interest for the great and the good? Ted Cruz stores presidential points with show at SCOTUS hearing. I mean, this was terrible. Ted Cruz really is the worst person on the planet, but it was even worse yesterday, after he grilled Katangi Brown Jackson in a completely unnecessary way. Everything that he was saying was completely irrelevant. And then, of course, he's only doing it to score political points, because then someone photographed him afterwards scrolling on his Twitter, searching for his own name to see how much of an impact he had had on social media, because that's all he cares about. That's all he cares about. The anti-racist baby book, mocked by Ted Cruz, now hits the bestseller list. Yeah, this is now a bestseller, thanks to Ted Cruz. Well done. Ancient tablet found by Texan could prove older Bible timeline. This is a tablet discovered by Stripling's team, was written about 1500 BC, which could be proof that the events of the Bible occurred hundreds of years earlier than previously believed. That's kind of amazing, isn't it? To think that, it was kind of slightly off. I think that's kind of rather brilliant. It says a tablet containing the words of an ancient Hebrew curse predating the Dead Sea Scrolls has been uncovered and translated by an archaeologist from Katy. The discovery, announced Thursday, could be proof of the true time period of the biblical Exodus. Dr. Scott Stripling, director of the Archaeological Studies Institute at the Bible Seminary in Katy, led the team that discovered the small folded lead tablet on Mount Ebal in Israel. It reads, "Cursed, cursed, cursed, cursed by the God of Yahweh. You will die cursed, cursed, you will surely die, cursed by Yahweh, cursed, cursed, cursed." It's like a kind of witch's spell, doesn't it? Anyway, it's kind of interesting. They actually look like two slices of bread, these tablets that they found. There's no home button, there's no FaceTime camera. What are they supposed to do with these things? Come on. Sandra's popped in. Hi. Stacey thanks me for the San Antonio Express news. Stacey says, what's up with Travis? It's not Travis today, it's Sarah. Let's say hi to Sarah. If she's ready, she can jump in at any time. I don't like to force people who might be busy, cooking or washing or redecorating, clearing up. Maybe closing the closet door that we peered into yesterday. A range of items hanging from the rafters.
Oh, hello.
Is the closet door shut today?
Oh, yes, the closet door is shut today. Yes.
I was having a little peek in.
For you. Yes.
I was having a little peek in yesterday. I was seeing a whole range
I know,
of
right? You're going to see how the sausage is made.
It didn't actually look dissimilar to my wardrobe, to be honest, Sarah. So you got
that
nothing
sounds
to worry
about right. That does sound about right. Yeah.
That's more about me being in dresses than you wearing men's clothes. I just want you to be aware of that.
No, I like men's clothes. I think they're comfortable.
I do not. I do not like men's clothes.
Oh, really? You guys
put
get
me
more
in a
pockets.
House dress any day.
Oh, I do love a house dress. I
Who
love
doesn't?
like a muumuu or
Right?
something like that. Oh, it's great.
Life without a muumuu is chaos. So.
It really is. Oh, muumuu and slippers. That's who I want to be when I'm older. I just want to walk around my house in a muumuu.
Why wait till you're older?
I know, right? Oh,
Right?
I just want to be like a rich lady just walking around my mansion. And
How's that going for you?
pretty good. I mean, they pay very well here. Oh, I shouldn't say that.
Don't say that. Yeah. What's Brooklyn like today? What's it like there? Is it? Oh, lovely!
Well,
a Venetian blind.
Lovely view out of my window. It is actually going to be really sunny today. It's going to be very sunny and 60 degrees, like perfect weather. I'm heading to my friend's house in New Jersey today. I'm just going to have a little day trip, so it's going to be great. It's a great day.
I've done the ferry to Hoboken a couple of times, which I love because I have a friend living in Hoboken. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go and see him for me and just tell him I'm thinking of him, it'd be very sweet of you.
Great.
He's actually he's probably about 80 years of age now. Actually, I haven't seen him for a few years because of the pandemia.
Oh,
but he's a maritime historian, and the thing that made him a maritime historian was living in Hoboken. You get to see all the ships come in, and during his life, he would watch these liners come in and became obsessed with them. And so now he's he's probably the most published author on passenger ships.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and he's super cute. His name's Bill Miller.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, hello to Bill.
He's super cute. Yes, he's camp as Christmas, as we say in England. I don't know if that doesn't really the phrase camp, which we would describe for someone to be effeminate, not used in America. Really, they used the word camp to describe a campsite, which it's not my go-to.
Oh, we describe. When we say like, oh, this movie is very campy, or that's so camp,
right?
Like over the top, like very like ridiculous type of.
Yeah, we don't use it to mean ridiculous. We mean it to mean just like gorgeous.
Yeah, or like the Met Gala theme that one year.
Right. Yeah. No wonder everyone was wearing weird clothes.
Yes.
No one got the correct memo.
Yeah. That's why Katy Perry was in that like hamburger.
Right. What a mistake.
Thing.
You know, should have been a hot dog. It would have been the right shape.
Oh, no, I prefer hamburgers.
Really?
Yes, they're easier to get vegetarian or vegan.
This is true. I'm a vegan, a recent vegan as well.
Oh.
Well, 3 years vegan. You can probably tell from my complexion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's quite difficult to stick to a vegan diet, I think, depending on where you live.
Yeah,
but I feel like where you and I live, it's very easy.
Really?
LA has a very big vegan community, yes?
It does, yes. A very big vegan community. It enables us to go places and not fear for our lives.
Yes.
That we're going to be left hungry.
Yes. Amazing.
Impossible, the brand, have started doing chicken nuggets in a bag. You can buy them in Trader Joe here. And they're completely delicious.
Really?
I don't know how much they taste like chicken. They look like chicken nuggets, but they're completely delicious.
Really?
In a little barbecue sauce. I mean, that's like... Very happy with that. No complaints.
Really interesting. Okay. I'll look into that.
It's just a tip, you know?
Yeah. I normally just make my own fake meats.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
How does one even start? What do you do? Like go behind the refrigerator and drag out all the dust?
Yes.
And
I use Vital Wheat gluten. Have you heard of that?
No. Is it gluten-free?
No, actually, but it's just like the it's like a protein powder.
Okay.
And you mix it with water and like add seasonings or whatever, and you kind of treat it like bread.
Right.
And like let it rest and knead it, and then you steam it and fry it up, and then it tastes just like chicken.
That's incredible.
Yeah, they make it, you can buy it pre-made in the store, but to me, like, it's so full of preservatives that I don't like it, but, yeah, you can do the same thing with flour and water, but you have to, like, wash it. It's very complicated, but yeah, I just use Vital Wheat gluten. It's great for fake meats. Yeah.
I have no idea.
I really like to cook, so I'm always looking for ways to, like...
Yeah, I like to heat up and claim that it's cooking. That's something I'm very good at.
I mean, microwaves are great. Yeah, I think being vegan is all about just making the food taste good, not trying to make it taste like what it's trying to be.
I agree. But in a way, it's nice that there are some kind of replacement products, because if you're transitioning, because, you know, I ate a lot of meat when I ate meat, and burgers was my favorite. And so the transition to be able to still burger was necessary. But weirdly, now I don't really eat those so much anymore.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's... in some ways being vegan is better for the environment, but and also like you're still getting like the packaging and all that stuff. It's still having like some environmental impact.
Yeah, it's nice to think that you are, you know, it's nice to try. Yeah.
I mean, industrial, this is a whole nother show, but like industrial farming and like all that stuff is not great, and like food for all the animals to keep them alive. It's just like, it's expensive, it's a lot, and so, but also like a lot of vegan food is still being wrapped in plastic, and it's still, and like the factories that it's made in, they're still emitting emissions, so it's all bad. But
you can't eradicate your footprint completely.
Oh no, not at all.
It's very difficult. You can reduce it, but it's very hard to eradicate it.
Oh yeah, but we do what we can, and
How do you feel about the people that don't do anything? Like literally don't do anything. Refuse to recycle because it's like a kind of snowflake thing to do. Won't make any changes at all. Because you must have come up against people, or even read about people, or seen TikTok videos of people who just really are the antithesis of you and your thinking.
I mean, I don't know I've never really come across anyone who's like really passionate about not you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you don't do those things, you just don't even think about it.
Yeah.
You're not like concerned. I've never come across anybody who's just like
vehemently
I'm never
against.
Gonna do this. Yeah, I've never.
Well, the former president was kind of like that, really, wasn't he? He didn't really care for any of it.
Yeah, but even then, it's just like at that point, it's like they don't care.
Yeah.
They're more about like, in the way he did it and the way a lot of like the GOP does it is like rolling back restrictions on oils and environmental restrictions and things like that. But nobody's really like, I refuse to do this. I refuse to like whatever. People just like don't even say that. They just don't even think about it. And again, I mean, how are those people any different though than people who like are still using like, or companies that are still, you know, emitting all this stuff for like being really bad for the environment and things like that. So I try not to pin it on individuals because there's only so much we can do when really like the government needs to impose a lot more strict laws. We need better infrastructure bill, and we need companies and countries to really lower their footprint now within the next like 5 years, not by 2050, not by 2030. Like we need that now.
Yeah, it's too little, too late, isn't it? It's almost like and they kind of know that by the time they get there, they're going to roll that back as well, and it's just going to get later and later. You know, they're relying on the fact that other people will just screw it up for society.
Yeah,
they won't be blamed.
That's what I mean. You know, there's only so much as individuals we can do, but we need, again, companies like McDonald's, like car companies and things like that who really, really make an impact to be more environmentally friendly in some way and be greener. But again, and even countries like China, they have a really, really big carbon footprint. I mean, not as big as the US, but very close. Like we need as a whole to make big changes. Cause like me drinking out of like a glass mug, that's great. But you know what I mean? It's just like one person. There's not a whole lot. Yeah.
Well, it's people like Starbucks that kind of need to start, isn't it? You know, the people that are kind of responsible for habits that are fundamentally changeable. And I haven't been into a Starbucks since forever because I'm really not a fan. But I feel like...
Yeah, I get that.
Are they using recyclable paper cups now? Because they never used to be. I mean, are they really... have they changed all that?
I mean, I haven't been to Starbucks in a while, but like, again, I think... little changes can happen as much as we want, but we just need bigger ones. That's why I don't really care when if someone says I refuse to do this, I refuse to do that, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really feel like that's gonna make a difference one way or another. Because we're still like, I still have things plugged in right now. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're the one responsible. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, this is why there's so many power cuts here in Los Angeles.
You know what I mean? Like we're still experiencing fire devastation and hurricane devastation and like things like that. So I'm just not I don't really pay those people any mind because, again, I don't really think it has a difference. I try and focus my energies on things that I can like control more and focus on like what I can do as a person.
It's very sweet. I really feel like we have a generation now of people who get it. And the previous generation just didn't get it because, you know, you're very typical now of people who are mindful. And it's not difficult to be mindful, make a little bit of effort to recycle or turn stuff off, or, you know. I mean, I use solar for pretty much everything. I try and use wherever I can. If there's like a solar option for something, I just put like lights outside my house, and like I've done them all solar, and they all it's all automated, and I really don't like the idea that you would, if there's an option to have a non-plug-it-in thing, then I'll get that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it would make even more of an impact if, like, you live in the hills, yes?
Yeah.
If, like, all of the hills did that, or, like, if all of Los Angeles did that. Like, there's only so much there's only so much energy one individual household uses.
Yeah, it's about 5 volts.
Yeah, exactly. So
much.
it's not, again, I would think that a place like Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Seattle, like cities that have a lot of lights and things like that, they need to be making huge changes. So that's what I'm more worried about, is laws that will have an impact other than somebody who like refuses to recycle. Because even when we do recycle, not everything that we put in the recycling bin actually gets recycled.
I know.
So
I mean, that's the crazy thing, isn't it? Yeah, it's kind of becoming more. I'm becoming more aware now of like they only recycle stuff because it's volatile. The price of recycling is volatile. You know, someone buys it. So if the price is low, they don't bother. They just throw it into landfill.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's very So again, I don't really pay attention to those people because like we need to change how we do things as a society as a whole and not just individually.
Lloyd has joined us, and Stacey says it might be a good idea for people not able to turn on and off the lamps. She went to McDonald's. Oh, that's right, and they started making some changes. Yeah, I think McDonald's is trying to do its best, isn't it? Because it knows that it has quite a large environmental impact with the number of cows that it's kind of taking off
and
the
they
earth.
Could pay their employees more.
Right.
I mean, in Sweden, and I'm pretty sure probably in England too, you're making like $22 an hour and you get paid leave.
Yeah.
And here that's not the case. So I hope, I want McDonald's to just be better. We just want them to be better as a company to their employees in general. It's a national pastime, isn't it, McDonald's? It's so really baked into the culture. It really is. So interesting to me. And gross. It is disgusting.
It's gross. It really isn't. It's not food, is it? It's just it's just flavors. I like their fries, but everyone likes their fries.
Yeah, but I used to live near a 24-hour walk-up window McDonald's where so gross. I can't eat it anymore. It's disgusting.
I like you. You're funny.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll let you take a break because I know that you've been on a sponsored talk there and we raised about $17 for charity, so well done.
Amazing. All right.
But I'll catch up with you in a little bit. Thank you so much, Sarah. I want to talk for a second about the right-wing activist Ginny Thomas. She is, of course, the wife of the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. And she helped push Trump's big lie, and it's been revealed, and I think we touched on it a little bit yesterday, but there's some more details today, that in the weeks after the 2020 election, it says the right-wing activist Ginny Thomas, who's married to the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who I think is in hospital at the moment, you know, he's pretending not to have COVID, repeatedly implored Donald Trump's chief of staff to help overturn the results, according to text messages obtained by the Washington Post and CBS News. Well, one of the 29 messages seen by the news outlets, Thomas wrote to Mark Meadows on the 10th of November, "Help this president stand firm, Mark," she said. "You are the leader with him who is standing for America's constitutional governance at the precipice. The majority knows Biden and the left is attempting the greatest heist of our history." I mean, what she's criticizing is democracy. You know, by heist, she means lots of people voting for Joe Biden. That was the heist. Well, the messages shed light on Thomas's direct line to the White House and how she used it to push the big lie that Trump had won the election with Meadows' apparent support, the Post reported. The exchanges are among 2,320 text messages handed to the House committee investigating the January 6 attack on the Capitol. "This is a fight of good versus evil," Meadows wrote in a 24th of November message. "Evil always looks like the victor until the King of Kings triumphs. Do not grow weary in well-doing. The fight continues. I have staked my career on it, well, at least my time in D.C. on it." Yeah, I mean, you know, Mark Meadows is clearly just as nuts as she is. It says Thomas did not respond to the newspaper's request for comment. She's previously said she does not discuss her activist work with her husband. Yeah, right. When the Supreme Court rejected Trump's challenges over the election in February last year, Clarence Thomas dissented, calling the decision baffling. by the Post notes. The text messages, 21 of which are from Thomas and 8 from Meadows, contain references to conspiracy theories. Thomas, for instance, highlights a claim popular among QAnon followers that the president had watermarked certain ballots as a means of identifying fraud. I mean, she is so far down the rabbit hole, and the crazy thing is that she really has the ear of her husband, and her husband is a Supreme Court judge, and as we know with any of the great thinkers, that often it's not them that wield the most influence, it's the people behind them. And in these partnerships, we find that people often, there is significant influence from home. That's the downtime. That's where the thoughts are gathered. That's where conversations are had. She also suggested the Bidens were behind supposed fraud. She said Biden crime family and ballot fraud co-conspirators are being arrested and detained for ballot fraud right now and over the coming days, and will be living in barges off Gitmo to face military tribunals for sedition, she wrote. I mean, she really is an absolute basket case. And it seems to me that, who are these people? Like, when did people become so completely out of touch with reality? When did that happen? I mean, how is the Supreme Court judge's wife this crazy? When did that... I just didn't think that it happened at this level. I thought people were educated and they understood the world and they traveled. How do you get to be the wife of a Supreme Court judge and also a QAnon person? QAnon used to be fringe. Not anymore. Thomas seemed to condemn some Republicans in Congress for being insufficiently loyal to Trump. House and Senate guys are pathetic too. Only 4 GOP House members seen out in street rallies with grassroots, she wrote in a 10th of November message, adding later that night, where the heck are all those who benefited from by president's coattails? Other messages refer to conservative commentators and lawyers who supported Trump's cause, including Sidney Powell, who Thomas apparently wanted to let lead and be the face of Trump's legal team. Powell was behind a slate of lawsuits seeking to overturn the election and faces investigation by the Texas State Bar Association over alleged false claims in court. Thomas expressed repeated support for Powell, even as she became a divisive figure in pro-Trump circles, the Post says. So it's just very interesting to me, and this is obviously going to have a huge effect on the January 6th committee's investigation. And the other thing that's interesting is that yesterday Donald Trump, I think we reported that he's announced that he's suing Hillary Clinton for claiming that he had connections with Russia. But the problem is, if that case plays out, I doubt that it will, but if that case plays out, what we're going to be left with is a whole load of evidence to show that Trump did in fact collude with Russia. Because he did, because it's been widely covered and reported and already investigated. And somehow he thinks that the guy is going to kind of get it, he's going to get off because of this. It's going to do the opposite. He really is not a very clever person. Let's jump on some more of your messages. Thank you very much for these. Stacey says my mum and Aunt Tracy are with us today. That's nice. And Stacey says that's not right to criticize democracy. Well, I agree. I mean, that's what she dressed it up as. She basically thought that it was a heist because she was losing. There it is. That's the reality of how these people think. I find it fascinating. Okay, let's move on a little bit here with some of these stories for you. That's right, we're going to talk about Mackenzie Scott. She's the former wife of Jeff Bezos, the, gazillionaire. And the story today is saying that she's donated $436 million to Habitat for Humanity International and 84 of its U.S. affiliates, the largest publicly disclosed donation from the billionaire philanthropist since she promised in 2019 to give away most of her wealth. She said we could not be more excited to get the gift at a time when in some ways the state of housing affordability is the worst that it's been in modern times, said Jonathan Reckford, chief executive of Habitat for Humanity International. The group received $25 million from Scott and her husband, Dan Jewett, with the remaining $411 million to be distributed among local affiliates. I mean, this is kind of incredible, isn't it? Because let's be honest, we really don't need this much money, do we? You know, if you've got billions, you really only need, I mean, worst case scenario, 50 million. You know, that would get you a very nice home. You could invest, you know, half of it and make a very nice income on the rest. I mean, how much money does a person need? I really, maybe more than 50 million. Maybe 50 million isn't enough these days to have Mackenzie's lifestyle. I don't really know her, but I recognize that to live modestly is so much better, not just for yourself, but better for the environment. You know, if you're flying private, that's obviously not good for the environment. If you have a millionaire's lifestyle, it's not good for the environment. Scott's donation amounts to nearly 8% of the $325 million in donations Habitat for Humanity International received in its 2020 fiscal year. Reckford said Habitat for Humanity will use Scott's donation of unrestricted funds to increase the supply of affordable housing, especially in communities of colour. Though they approach the problem in varying ways, most local affiliates will pursue projects in their communities, while the international group will focus on broader advocacy and efforts to build homes for working-class families. Yeah, it says even before COVID, we already had 1 in 7 families paying over half their income on rent or mortgage, Reckford said. The last 2 years made that problem even worse, with many people seeking to buy larger houses to ride out the pandemic. The scarcity of housing drove up prices in many markets across the US, putting homes out of reach for many first-time buyers. So there we go. That's apparently she's worth 48. It's almost unbelievable. She's worth $48 billion. I was thinking, well, you know, if she's giving away like $436 million, it's not going to leave her very much over. Irrelevant. She has 48 billion. So therefore 436 million is not even 1 billion, and she has 48 billion. I mean, she is insanely rich. Which begs the question, how rich is Jeff Bezos? You know? I mean, that's quite the divorce settlement, isn't it? Aside from an occasional blog spot, the author and philanthropist doesn't discuss her donations, which exceeded $8 billion in 2 years after her divorce from Jeff, who was the richest person in the world. As part of the divorce settlement, Scott received 4% of Amazon shares. That's so much money. In December, in the hopes that she would reduce the attention she draws, she declined to announce how much or whom she donated money. She said she would prefer to let the recipients announce her gifts, as Habitat for Humanity is expected to do so, or has done so this week. Last week, the Boys and Girls Clubs of America announced that it and 62 local boys and clubs and girls clubs had received $281 million from Scott. On Monday, the Fortune Society, a New York-based group that helps the formerly incarcerated re-enter society, announced that Scott had donated $10 million to them. I mean, it is kind of wonderful that in a roundabout way, every purchase you make on Amazon is going into these philanthropic projects. But it could be done more directly, don't you think? You do get the choice on the Amazon site to kind of donate some of your money, you know, pledge some money. So it does work. Okay, so that's the billionaire Scott. I mean, how much is too much? You know, maybe you can message me and let me know. Silly Penguin is with us as well, Lloydie. And who else? Oh, James has dropped in from California. Hello, James. How much is too much? Maybe you can let me know. Like, have you picked an amount, a money amount in your mind of how much money is enough for you to kind of have a nice life on, retire on? Or if you wanted to win, like, how much would you need to win? You can text at backchannel.tv. You can wake up your Echo show and say, and then your message. And you're also very welcome to follow the show on YouTube. You can comment there as well. Okay, let's move on with some of your messages. What do we have? Let's have a look. Oh, Laura is in from New York. Stacy says 4 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 4 billion would be too much. 4 billion. I mean, this is really the thing, isn't it? When you pick a number, I mean, for me, I think I'll be very happy with like 36 million, maybe 36.5 million, rather than billion or gazillion or devillion or gazillion. You know, how many gazillions would you feel is enough? This is after Mackenzie Scott has given 436 McGillion for US affordable housing. She's promised to donate more than half of her wealth. I mean, keep going, more than half. It's a bit tight, isn't it? I mentioned earlier the story about grocery stores struggling to supply Totino's and Pillsbury. This is worth a little look, if you don't mind, if you spare me a moment just to have this conversation. Yes, the company's been struggling to meet demand for its refrigerated pizza and dough in the United States. Typically, General Mills likes to be able to meet customer demand 98 to 99% of the time. In other words, when shoppers go hunting for Totino's or other brands, General Mills wants them to find what they're looking for almost without fail. But in the 3 months ended February 27, service levels for refrigerated pizza and dough dropped to the 70% range, the company noted in a presentation of its quarterly financial results on Wednesday. Interesting. The CEO, Kofi Bruce, said acute supply shortages affected those categories. The situation started to improve in the last few weeks of the quarter, according to the company, but supplies are still below normal levels. The food giant has had a tough time meeting demand for several of its products through the pandemic, as supply chain disruptions and labor shortages curtailed normal operations. So there we go. What else do they supply? Oh, they do Cheerios and things like that. Okay, well, I think we're going to see more of this. You know, if you think this is like a one-off, forget it. You know, I think as the war continues and as the pandemic rages, and the pandemic is going to get worse, not going to get better in the short term. I feel like we're going to have to just come to terms with shortages. You know, chip shortages in cars has been a bit of an issue. It's made them more expensive. I wonder how many people are actually paying the higher prices versus just saying, I'm going to go without. I'm not going to get a new car. I'm going to think of something else. Do you feel like if the prices of things go up, you're just like, oh, well, I'll just buy that then? Because, I mean, I was struggling the other day with, I think it's called Good Earth. It's like a margarine, you know, a butter replacement, vegan butter replacement. And I normally pay like $4.50 for it, or even $3.79 sometimes in Trader Joe's. And it was $6.99. It gone up like, I mean, it nearly doubled if you think about it. And I was just like, wow, I can't pay that. Like, I literally can't part with that much money. So I didn't. And then, of course, I ran out. And so I kind of had to then, like, rethink everything. What am I going to do? Next time I was in the store, I forgot. It was in the cheaper store, Trader Joe's, and where it was like $4 or $5. Forgot to pick it up. Then I'm in Whole Foods buying one luxury item. And I was like, oh, I'm going to have to get it. And it was like, I think it was $5.99. It's too much. It shouldn't be that much. And I was trying to think, you know, is there a chip in here? Is there a Chinese imported microchip? Is that the reason why this margarine is so expensive? I mean, how else? Why else would it be that much extra money? So I was just interested to know if you will pay the extra, or if you see the new price, you're just like, nah, not doing that. Nah. Because I worry that we feel compelled just to pay it. Just pay the money. And then, you know, for those of us, you know, regular people, we are suddenly having to, like, carry the burden of the cost of the pandemic, the knock-on effects, the chip shortage, whatever else is affecting it, the war in Ukraine, certainly. You know, we are really carrying these additional costs. And so it's the regular working people that end up paying the additional prices, not the lawmakers. They can afford it. Anybody that earns like over a 6-figure salary can kind of weather the storm, the cost of living. But if you don't, then you're invariably the one that is subsidizing it for everybody else. So how do we qualify this? This is my concern. It's like, how do we? Where do you find the extra money from when the prices of things go up? And how do they solve that problem? If indeed it is a problem. Sarah, are you still there? Can we, party on? I'm just genuinely interested in asking, because I asked our listeners and nobody really wanted to respond, which is fine because they're probably too busy just living their lives, and I understand that. I was asking how much is too much, in terms of like having, if you had to pick a number, as in like a lottery win, because of Mackenzie Scott giving away $436 million, and it turned out I was feeling sorry for her until I realized she had $48 billion. Do you, like me, have a recurring dream of winning a lottery?
No,
and suddenly being insanely wealthy? Do you ever have that dream?
No, I do not. I do not want that.
Well, I don't have it regularly, but I have it occasionally. But my win is not a lot. Like,
no.
I win like 20 grand.
No, I'm like, I would never want to. I don't need that much money. I would love to. My life goal is to make like 350 grand a year, maybe a little more than that. That's like my crazy life dream. But I don't need like a big house and like all these. No. I would not know what to do with it. If I was that rich, I would probably do what she's doing and just make sure I would try and end homelessness everywhere, donate money to voting rights groups and environmental groups that are doing grassroots work, and I would just donate to organizations like the Innocence Project, working on prison abolition and stuff like that. That's what I would do, and I would just try and get rid of it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because I cannot. If I made like $500,000 a year, that's like my crazy fantasy.
It's a crazy fantasy.
It really is. Because now,
you're getting close on the Backchannel wages.
I am actually. So,
every little helps.
Every little bit helps, but I think money is, people say like, oh, money is evil, but unfortunately we live in a society where we need that, but I don't. I'm not big.
The dollar is
into
king, though, isn't it? And so much of America is like based on getting rich, and the role models are kind of wealthy, and success is measured by money rather than personal success or self-improvement or generosity or kindness. It's like, why is it? Is that the capitalist system that's rubbed off onto people thinking that that's how you measure success? I think for me, measuring success is like not getting run over,
Oh, yeah. I feel like I'm already successful in that I'm, I turned my whole entire career around to now have a new one. But
what were you doing before? Do you mind me asking?
I was a stage manager for
that's
theater.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah. And then unemployed and now doing this. But
they closed all the theaters.
Yeah, yes, they did. And then, but that's, it's a whole nother thing. But I think you shouldn't measure success by how much money you make. I try to measure it on how much I've grown as a person.
Yeah.
And how I try and not look back too much, but focus on like the present and where I am now and how like much has changed.
Well, it's about us becoming enriched.
Yes.
Rather than riched. And that's why I never like to kind of going to see properties with realtors who refer to these high net worth areas and, constantly
Yeah, but
talking.
the Hills is a very, that's a very high net worth area, right?
Yeah, not so much where I live. Where I live, most of the houses are shacks. My house is put together with gum. It's like when the wind blows, you're like, this thing's going to fall off the corner.
But
you're right. There are some insane properties around here.
Oh yeah, I mean, just driving around, you can see is it Griffith Observatory?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Yeah,
Yeah.
from some of the houses. Crazy.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Did you see the Adele concert that she did on there?
Yeah, I saw videos of it.
Yeah. I didn't expect you to go to it. It was an invited audience. There was only about 60
yeah, I think
celebrities.
Oprah was there.
Oprah was there. Yeah,
Wow.
it was pretty special. There was a very funny story about is his name Seth? What's the comedian Seth
Rogen?
Rogen.
Yeah, he was high during.
He was so high, and because he didn't know he was going, and he was at home like getting baked with his wife. And then he gets a phone call from someone saying, "Why are you not at this thing?" And he was like, "I don't know anything about it." And they're like, "Yeah, we literally, like, we're waiting for you." So they send a car for him, and they're just so high, and he didn't realize he was going to be put in the front row. And so all of these kind of reverse shots, reactionary shots of her singing are of Seth sitting there, like, off his face, like floating.
Wow.
It was so cute.
I love that him and his wife get stoned together.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean,
It really is beautiful.
What we're all looking for, fundamentally, is somebody just to do drugs with, I think,
Yeah.
Legally, obviously. I'm in California, I can say that.
Oh, yeah, New York, too.
Oh, is it now legal in New York?
Yeah, they're working on getting dispensaries up and coming, and I hope, obviously, I mean, soapbox moment here, I hope they give the licenses to mostly the Black community, because they're the ones who have been unfairly targeted by this war on drugs, and how a lot of Black people are in jail for marijuana possession or things like that. So I hope that happens. But yes, it is legalized here, and it was, I think, decriminalized before that.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? In England, marijuana is a Class B drug, so it's like you'll really get into a lot of trouble for owning any marijuana.
Well, don't they call it spliff?
A spliff is a joint, is the joint itself. Well, I think the word you're thinking of is skunk, which...
Skunk?
Yeah, skunk is basically the horrific kind of... It's very low-quality weed that they can get in England and, Europe. And it's not pure, and it's really and it's cheap and nasty, and it's what people smoke in a little spliff.
Okay.
And it stinks.
I've also heard cigarettes are more expensive over there, too.
Oh, yeah. They put the price of those right up, to discourage people from smoking, obviously.
And
I wouldn't know how much a packet of cigarette is. I guess a packet of cigarettes is probably about $20. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it doesn't stop people smoking, sadly.
There are worse things.
Yeah. I mean, although, have you ever smoked? Have you ever smoked cigarettes?
Oh, yeah. I quit maybe 2014, 2015.
Yeah. I'm sure you looked amazing with a cigarette in your hand, just for cool purposes. I've never done it. Never tried it,
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I mean, the theater community were a bunch
There's a lot of
smokers.
smoking.
It's a lot of smoking. Yeah.
How did you get into stage management originally? What was your story?
My dad is a theater critic, and growing up, I just went to New York all the time seeing Broadway shows, and I just, kind of fell into it in college, and then afterwards, I just, people started hiring me, and I just kind of did it, and then I stopped doing it because it's very, very stressful. And producing podcasts is just like more fun to me.
It's also the future, It's the future.
It is.
I have a love-hate relationship with the theater. I have a lot of experience in it, and
okay.
But I'm very good at walking out of shows. I try and go and see just the first half of shows.
Yeah.
Sometimes just the second half.
Yeah.
Because invariably it's like if it's going to be super long, it's just too much for me. You know?
I mean, well, they have your money either way, so it doesn't matter.
They do, yeah. Although there are tricks for getting the cheapest seats and sitting in a really good place,
of course.
I'm a big fan of that one. I like to book the back row of the orchestra stalls and then get there and complain and say I thought I'd booked the front row, but I must have had the plan upside down. That's quite a good one. And then they'll switch you,
Amazing. Yeah, I don't know.
Because no one books the back row,
Oh, yeah. Well, in some theaters, that's where the lighting booth is.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
the sound booth. So,
That's right, yeah. There's a very good documentary on, I'd like to say Amazon maybe, about Broadway closing and then briefly reopening. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was very well made.
It's the theater community I just have a really love-hate relationship with. It can be just like really, really toxic. And a lot of unhealthy work ethics and a lot of unhealthy environments, but it can also be really positive. I mean, it's being gay and being a woman myself, it's always a welcoming community for that. But there's still underlying issues of like racism and homophobia and misogyny within the community. And, a lot of, and it's so like, I'm very privileged in that I've gotten to see a lot of shows, but unfortunately, the price of those tickets, it's not really accessible to everyone. Yeah. So a community that we're trying to make more diverse, a lot of people don't really have access to go see it. Yeah. So in one way, I think the theater is amazing. I think the Broadway community is great, but on the other hand, there is still a ton of work to be done that I guess I naively thought would get done a little bit during the pandemic, and unfortunately it didn't. So I think if Broadway is listening, I urge them to just be better. Just be better.
It's interesting to hear, because you would have thought that, the theater would be the most thoughtful, progressive, welcoming, and the less kind of turbulent in terms of equality and rights and respect.
I mean, in some theater communities, yes, it is very welcoming, but I believe that the cream of the crop, like Broadway, still has lots and lots of work to do. The people who produce shows are mainly white men, and you can see that, a show like Hamilton, a lot of people of color cast in that show. A show about history and using hip hop, which is genius, like a great way to get like high schoolers to learn stuff. But the tickets were really expensive. Yeah. So a lot of the people who they wanted to come see the show couldn't even see it because it wasn't accessible to them. Right. And unfortunately, that's the reality. So, and a lot of people always say, like, obviously diversity on stage is really important, but also backstage. The lighting design, sound design, stage manager, director, like down to
they're still invariably kind of white men.
Yeah, and like the dressers, the wardrobe people, a lot of times when Black people are actors in a show or whatever, they have to do their own hair. There's not a hairdresser provided who knows how to do Black people's hair. And little things like that, still don't always happen. So I think that, it just needs to get better. We need to be hiring and not just throw out diversity as a buzzword, but actually like make a more diverse community on all fronts. And because that's how you make it fair. That's just like, even because people, even as far as like lighting design, people with different skin tones are going to show up different under lighting.
Right, of course.
You know what I mean? So it's it's really, really important to just like be hiring different types of people. But I hope that it steadily improves, but unfortunately, the people who have the money and are making the decisions don't really think like I do, and are only thinking about a bang for their buck and how can they make a hit instead of what can we do to improve. So, I mean,
I one of my best friends is a theatre critic in England, probably the most well-known theatre critic in the UK, and he and I would go to the Tonys every year, and we would go to the dress rehearsal of the Tonys on the Sunday morning, and spend a week like looking at shows and reviewing shows. So your dad probably knows him very well, because he also does reviews for Playbill occasionally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, his name's Mark Shenton.
Yeah, my dad has a podcast called Sounds of Broadway.
Oh,
and
really?
He interviews a lot of people within the community. So maybe
That's
he
great.
actually does know him.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
It's so exciting to have a dad that's got like something cool going on that you can engage
That's also how I got into podcasting, is because of him.
Really?
Yeah. He had a radio show. Before he got into podcasting, he had a radio show all about Broadway for years. And he turned it into a podcast. And yeah, it's really cool. I love being able to like do that. And we like talk about our numbers and like how we do everything. But yeah.
Super exciting. Well, thank you for that little
Yeah,
plug
that's
for Sounds of Broadway.
Yeah, everybody go listen.
Yeah, I'm going to subscribe for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's do the US news update now.
All right.
We're going to get our little heads around what's happening across the US. It's a daily podcast that I do. It's only 2 minutes long, but it'll give you a chance to know what's happening across the United States. So you can subscribe to it wherever you get your podcasts. And here it is. It's Friday, March 25. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US news update. I'm Anthony Davis. Virginia Thomas, the wife of conservative Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, urged former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to work to overturn the results of the 2020 election in a series of text messages, the Washington Post and CBS News reported on Thursday. The messages, sent in the weeks following the November 3rd presidential election, show that Thomas advised Meadows to make a plan and release the Kraken in a bid to preserve Donald Trump's presidency. Virginia Thomas, a far-right conservative activist and attorney, could not immediately be reached for comment. Sidney Powell, who represented Trump's campaign when he sought to overturn the election result, filed lawsuits challenging counts in multiple states in support of Trump's false claims of widespread election fraud. She had previously vowed to release the Kraken to expose the alleged fraud, a reference to the sea monster of Scandinavian folklore. Meanwhile, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Kentucky passed bills on Thursday that would ban transgender youth from participating in girls' sports, the latest in a flurry of state legislation by Republicans on a heated election year issue. Supporters of these bans argue they are needed to ensure transgender athletes do not have an unfair advantage. Opponents of the bans, including advocates for transgender people and organizations like the Women's Sports Foundation, say that such measures are discriminatory, and they advocate for the inclusion of transgender students in school sports. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. It is the US News Update. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anthony Davis. This is Backchannel. It's 8 minutes after 10 here on the West Coast, and it's 8 minutes after 1 Eastern. I'm here till 2. Then your pal Hal will take over and do more chat with you. Lots of messages. Obnoxious Armadillo has joined in and said hi. Hello, Obnoxious Armadillo. Great to see you. Stacey says, Sarah, you've got a beautiful skin tone, although I can hardly see it. It's because she's living in the shadows. Sanya's with us, Madeline, Fiery Tiger. Stacey says, Anthony, I need to listen to your podcast tonight. Taddy's here, Strange Pigeon, and Hampton and Rain, Fearful Horse. So many people joining in with us. Thank you very much. I've been asking the question, how much is too much? Like, do you imagine if you had like a win or you made a lot of money, like how much is that amount? Have you like put a price on it? I know it's a bit of a weird question, but it's also kind of important as well. And then, what was the other thing I was going to suggest? Oh, yes, that's right. If you want to wake up your Echo show, which you can do, you just wake it up, say the word say, and then your message. That's all you do. Simple. And then finally, if you have a browser, I'm sure you do, backchannel.tv is the way to go. That's backchannel.tv if you want to send a message there. So put it into any web browser. That's kind of the way it's done. Okay, let's go back to some of the stories that we were going to talk about. I wanted to talk about high gas prices and ways to kind of, soften the blow. With COVID caseloads falling dramatically in the US starting in February, restrictions being relaxed or dropped, those long-delayed epic spring and summer American road trips appeared to be on the vacation horizon. And then, bam! Gasoline prices started skyrocketing, and this bout of inflation feels like a gut punch after everything else. And of course, we have the war in Ukraine, which is affecting gas prices a little, not a huge amount, but I think only 3% of oil comes from there. But even so, this chair is driving me crazy. So, if you're a low-income family or someone who has to, make every single dollar count, it can be very disheartening and expensive to kind of just even run a car, But don't give up on your road trip dreams entirely, or pay more than you need to, even if you can't afford it. Here's a few ways to squeeze the most out of every precious drop of fuel. There are apps now where you can download the app to kind of find the least expensive gasoline. You don't even need to go driving around wasting gas looking for it. And in fact, if you use Google Maps, you can click on the gas station and it'll tell you the current price of regular unleaded fuel. But there's also like the AAA mobile app or the Gas Buddy app or Gas Guru, or even Geico has got an app to reduce prices or look for cheaper prices. Waze has also got that as well. And there's these card discounts. Discover cards, you get cash back. Nerd Wallet, Penny Hoarder has some options you can check out as well. So, like membership cards are kind of useful. And even like getting points, like with a Shell card and stuff like that, there's all ways of doing it. And then you can also bypass the stations just off of major highways, because they say it's usually best not to use the stations right along the interstate. You can, because they tend to have higher prices, because of the convenience. Instead, drive a few miles down the road, look for residential areas or remote rural areas, and you can put those apps to use once you pull over. The other thing is getting stingy at expensive gas stations. If you're running really low on gas and you're stuck in an area with jacked up prices, you don't need to fill up all the way. You could just put a little bit of gas in, just enough to kind of get you to a cheaper gas station. That's an option that one could consider. And pump enough gas to safely get, to where you're going, and then finish filling up your tank at a cheaper place. Edmunds advises not to let your tank get below 1/4, though. Did you know that? That's kind of a thing in like the car world. It's like in order to, because you don't want the sediment getting into the engine. So the secret is to keep your gas tank at about 1/4 at all times, if you can afford that. Vehicle maintenance is another way to do that. Keep up with your vehicle maintenance, which reduces gas. And good driving habits. Now, this is something that you can really learn about if you drive electric, because you're encouraged when you drive electric to just use less battery. So you go easier on the gas. And that basically helps you, just kind of helps you not waste gas or battery. And so if you have driven electric, you'll know all of the tricks, like going easy on the pedal and stuff like that. There are ways and means to do this. So drivers should be sure to watch themselves on excessive idling as well. According to Edmunds, it's burning gas and literally getting you nowhere. Even in winter, you don't need to warm up the car. If you're going to be idling longer than 60 seconds, just cut off the vehicle, It's like the thing to do. Try to avoid construction zones if you can. Perhaps if you can shift outside of the peak period just a little bit in your travels to avoid that congestion and the idling that, associated with that. And also you can cut out those jackrabbit starts and hard acceleration. Moderately ease into your starts. Apply brakes early for stops. Apparently we burn a lot of fuel when we drive aggressively, so take it easy on the accelerator, drive cautiously, carefully, drive the speed limit, Use cruise control lest the road is slippery. These are all ways of reducing your gas usage. And it's crazy to me that we're having to kind of make these announcements now, that we really are we're so reliant on gas, and also it's so expensive that we kind of have to, make these kind of assumptions that we can't afford to drive normally or how we would traditionally. So driving more slowly and steadily, if you drive at 50 miles an hour, you'll get about 14% savings If you go faster than 50, then the quicker you'll burn up your gas. So you could go a little slower. You know, you could do 60 and stick at 60 and you'll burn less gas. And you could take a scenic route and go on a consistent speed in the sweet spot to make the most of your fuel economy. Getting off the bland interstates and major highways and onto the road, less traveled, is part of the fun anyway, apparently. And considering a nearcation, they say, you know, instead of like doing a long road trip and heading off into the middle of nowhere, there's options for settling for yet another staycation and an epic cross-country road trip that would just bust your budget. So it's called the nearcation. You know, think about places closer to home, yet far enough away to feel like a bona fide journey. Edmunds has a list of places around the US that may not come immediately to mind when planning a road trip, but many of these are closer to major population centers than some of the widely popular but remote national parks. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, we really can make some changes, and off the back of those changes, we can potentially save a little money at the same time. So think about that, you know. Maybe you can let me know where you've gone if you've decided to do a vacation but stay closer to home. And you want to tell me about it, you're welcome to do that. Legit Hummingbird has dropped in. Hello, hello, hello. Stacey says I never go below 2/4 of a tank. Or half a tank, I think, to get gas to save time and money. And Chanel is with us as well. And Hank has joined us. Welcome. Obnoxious Armadillo says hi. So, thank you and welcome. We're talking about gas prices and saving money at the pump and all of these things. You know, it's kind of interesting. Just in terms of the rising prices, I mean, here in California, I found out that the reason that it's so expensive to get gas here is because the concoction that makes California gas is slightly different to other parts of the country. And I think it's because it's much warmer here, and therefore you maybe don't need to burn as much gas to get where you're going. So they actually reduce the recipe for carbon purposes to use less fossil fuel. So it's more watered down in California and yet more expensive. I mean, it might not be watered down, but it's just like the chemistry that is used to make it can only be supplied by a certain suppliers, and that's why gas in California is more expensive. I want to talk about the happiness levels around the globe because this has been mapped again. Sometimes they do this, you know. And while countless academic researchers have tried to get to the bottom of this, the truth is it's a complicated question to ask. Where is the happiest place to live? Now, happiness levels depend on a number of factors, including one's financial security, perceptions of social support, feelings of personal freedom. The map pulls data from the World Happiness Report to uncover the average happiness scores of 146 countries. It shows average scores from 2019 to 2021 and highlights which countries are the happiest or unhappiest and why. So how is happiness measured? You know, before diving in, we should briefly touch on how happiness levels are measured in this report. Firstly, they take data from thousands of respondents for each country who were asked to rate their subjective well-being, which is their happiness score, using the Cantrell Life Ladder question. Any ideas? Me neither. But they basically also do a regression analysis to look at how happiness scores could be explained. So they look at social support and life expectancy and freedom to make life choices, generosity, GDP data per capita, perceptions of corruption and positive and negative effects. Similar to last year, the report takes special considerations to track how COVID-19 has impacted aspects of our daily lives and how it's affected global happiness levels. Well, worldwide happiness comes at an average score of 5.6, which is a slight improvement since last year, apparently. So that's the worldwide happiness score, 5.6. North America, any ideas? Because apparently Canada last year was the happiest place in North America. However, it lost some ground on the global ranking. It went down to 15th this year, compared to 14th the year prior. So in terms of North America, the United States on the happiness level, 7. Canada, 7. Mexico, 6.1. I do find it kind of interesting. South America, weirdly, less so. Brazil, 6.3. Argentina, 6. Still above the world average, isn't it? Europe, quite a lot more so, weirdly. The United Kingdom got 6.9. Russia got a 5.5. Ukraine got a 5.1. So they're saying that you'll have more fun and be happier living in Russia, which is not a free space, than Ukraine, which is free. Interesting. France gets a 6.7, Spain a 6.5, Italy a 6.5, and Germany gets a 7, which doesn't surprise me at all. Austria a 7.2, and Switzerland a 7.5. So yes, Switzerland really has always been, for many years, has been one of the happiest places to live. It's pretty amazing. I've been to Switzerland. It's pretty amazing there. Romania, weirdly, was the most improved country in Europe. It climbed 18 points, or spots, on the global rankings since last year's report. Over the last decade, the country has seen some of the most significant economic growth in the European Union and was able to bounce back quickly from its COVID-19 triggered slump. Ukraine ranks in last place, making it the unhappiest country in Europe. Ukraine has experienced ongoing challenges, as we know. There's been the separatist shellings there, and the war obviously has been going on for 8 years, and now recently Russia launching the full-scale invasion. And as a result of the conflict, over 3 million people have now fled the country. It's probably a bit more than that now. The Middle East, less so happy. Afghanistan gets a 2.4, you can understand. Saudi Arabia a 6.5. Iran a 4.9. The UAE a 6.6. That's interesting, isn't it? Yemen a 4.2. Kazakhstan 6.2. Very interesting to me. China a 5.6 for the happiest. Bear in mind the average across the world is a 5.4. Australia does very well with a 7.2. Apparently India is one of the most unhappy in the kind of East Asia and Oceania areas. Which is a shame. Africa doesn't do so great. 4s, plenty of 4s. Algeria, 5.1. Ethiopia, 4.2. Nigeria, 4.6. Nigeria is going to be like... They're saying that Nigeria is just going to be like one of the most heavily populated places on the planet. So it's just interesting to me, because I moved to California for a better quality of life. The United States as a whole gets a 7. And guess what? The UK gets a 6.9. So maybe I moved here for 0.1 of a percentage point, I'll take it. So let me know, if where you're living is kind of the happy place or the less so happy place. Violet Mule has joined in. Hello, Violet Mule in Cincinnati. Welcome to Backchannel. Paul has popped in as well on Proper Cuckoo. And Stacey says, I'll stay right here. This is also the thing about, living abroad or relocating or any of these things. Your happiness needs to be measured in where you're at internally. And I think all these external factors are doing it a bit of a disservice. We actually deserve to be considered happy from the inside first. Because you can move anywhere. You could go to Hawaii, which is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. But if what's inside is not being looked after and isn't getting the best, then you might as well be in Afghanistan. Or certainly Los Angeles. And this is what we do. We often travel to far off places to kind of search for ourselves. And actually, ourselves was with us all the time. Anyway, what needed to change, what needed to be improved was from within. Not in any of these beautiful places. So if you have a choice between Hawaii and Los Angeles is more of a busy, bustling metropolis with grand ideas and pop-up restaurants and interesting events, then, maybe it's more stimulating than going to a place where it is much less, industrial. Because the industrialization of places affords one the opportunity to kind of really get in with that, Anyway. It's worth discussing, isn't it? It's something to discuss. Have you ever thought about moving somewhere other than where you're at now? Like, have you lived in the same place since forever? I mean, I moved 5,500 miles to seek some relative calm and peace, and I definitely did the right thing. Definitely did the right thing. Flashy Rooster has just dropped in. Thank you, Flashy. Great to see you. Welcome. Nice to know that you're part of Backchannel. We were going to talk about global oil markets. Do you remember I mentioned at the beginning of the show we were going to kind of look at this together? It's kind of interesting. The Permian Basin, a sprawling shale patch that lies beneath Texas and New Mexico, is uniquely positioned to become the world's most important growth engine for oil production. It says, where can the world quickly turn to for more oil? This is obviously off the back of Russia being ostracized from the rest of the global community. The answer, it turns out, isn't the traditional powerhouse of OPEC or the promising new offshore fields of Brazil. Instead, the weight of the oil world is falling squarely on the shoulders of a few countries tucked into lonely corners of the US Southwest. It's called the Permian Basin, a sprawling shale patch that lies beneath Texas and New Mexico, uniquely positioned to become the world's most important growth engine for oil production. The bulk of that in expansion will come from just 5 counties that make up about 15% of its total area. And this is what's interesting to me is, the fact that we are, we're basically living now in a place where we are going to become increasingly reliant on renewables, but we're not producing them fast enough, And I feel like we haven't allowed ourselves to catch up. We're hearing about this stuff. We're planning for it. But in terms of catching up with it, in terms of our modern reality, it's just not happening. There's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. And with that, off the back of that, I feel like it's time that, people broke that cycle. Because here what they're talking about is just more shale. Shale is fracking, as you know, which is like squirting water into the ground at a very high speed in order to, break it up. And off the back of that is the release of gas, which is then captured. Well, the Permian Basin is a sprawling shale patch. And Russia's invasion of Ukraine has revealed to the broader world that those who follow energy markets have been flagging for some time. Oil markets are tight, really tight. But I'd rather wish that instead of looking to the Permian Basin, why not really take this time to invest really heavily in renewables? Why do we have to replace that 3% of oil and gas that we get from Russia here in the US? Why do we have to increase our exports? I mean, why not just say we're going to build wind farms or wind turbines? Why is that not the way to go? Why do we have to why do we have to replace something that's missing that is a fossil fuel with more fossil fuel? Surely you can replace fossil fuel with an environmentally friendly option. Maybe this is the time. That's my point. It's like it's all very well making these plans for the future, but the need is now. The time is now. The need is now. So we really have to deal with it now. And that's why the climate and social care bill, which needs to be passed, is not being passed. It's because people like Joe Manchin are preventing it from being passed. And he has huge interests in oil and gas. He's the guy. To cool things down, all eyes are on the Permian, it says. That makes the debate raging among drillers in the basin. Whether to unleash the drill rigs or not, extremely pressing to a world dealing with the inflationary blow of oil's price surge. Output in the Permian is above pre-pandemic levels, but suppliers are cautious about how much more we need to add. They've got to answer to investors who've demanded capital discipline, and while Joe Biden's currently asking US oil companies to step up production, his historic hostility towards fossil fuels means the industry seeks long-term risk. I just don't understand why there's an opportunity now to really push for renewables. Like, this is the time. This is the moment in our history where our leaders go, you know something? There's a shortage of oil because of the war and whatever else, so we're just not going to do it. You know, we're just going to, now is the time to switch. And for you, now is the time to switch to an electric vehicle. Now is the time to put solar panels on the roof of your house. Now is the time. Not at some point in the future, now. We've been given this moment in time, this kind of gap where it needs to be filled. Sarah, are you still there? Do you want to jump back in again? I mean, I hate to kind of invite you on all the time, but I kind of miss you now. You know, you've become like a luxury item, you know, like become like my favorite part of the show. And the thing is, when you're on, I feel like I'm watching your show as opposed to you sharing mine, which is great. You know, we should kind of change the name down here. But I was just posing the question, really, that if there is this window of opportunity right now to kind of change things up, then why wouldn't we take it? Why do we have to go back to our old ways? Why can't we just enjoy the temporary reduction in oil and then replace it with renewables? Hi.
Hello.
Where are you now?
Oh, I switched positions because it's easier to see me over here. It's not as dark.
Oh, I see. That's very good. It's quite dark, your place, isn't it? Do you have any lamps? No.
Yeah, I have an overhead lamp. I think it's also just my camera. You know, I have a MacBook Air built-in camera, so.
Well, if it's the old one, is it the older one or is it the newer one?
It is, I think I got this in like 2018, 2017.
Yeah, then it might be the new one, which does have a very bad camera.
Yes,
because I have the same, and it has a very bad camera. And if I was to switch to that camera now, I might be able to do it, actually. Do you want to see? This is kind of a fun experiment.
Okay.
Look at the difference if I switch to the built-in Mac camera. Look at this. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I mean.
Oh wow.
Right? That's what yours looks like. You know, that's the quality of yours, right? So I just plugged in a $40 camera.
Oh wow.
And then it looks like that. And it's such a shame because, Apple make really good stuff, but for some reason when it came to cameras around 2017 when the MacBook Air came out, the new MacBook Air, the old MacBook Air from the year before, we had a much better camera in it.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm like the Apple guy, I like fix old computers. It's like my hobby.
Oh, okay. Amazing.
I take them apart and make them good again.
Cool.
Again, it's my desire to recycle and like do some good,
Oh, okay.
bring some positivity to the world.
Oh.
Well, people, I've met loads of people and they're like, I want to get a new Mac. And I'm like, what's wrong with the old one? And they're like, oh, it's slow. And it's like, well, it's not the Mac that's slow. It's the software that's slow, or it's the hard drive that's slow. You can easily fix these things, like I said to you, And so I really feel like you need to exhaust all options with your existing kit before you start to, go and spend $1,000 on something else,
Oh, yeah, because it's so expensive.
Yeah, crazy expensive.
Yeah.
I reluctantly bought this Mac for the purposes of this show, as it happens, and it turns out it was completely unnecessary. My problem was Google Chrome. Are you using Chrome?
Yes.
You see, that's the problem. It doesn't work on a Mac. It slows it right down.
Oh, the Restream?
Yeah. So there's actually another browser that you can use, an alternative that works a bit like Chrome, that is free, and it will make your Mac super fast.
Oh,
yeah.
What browser?
I forget what it's called.
Is it Safari?
Is it Safari? No, it's not Safari. No, it's called. I'm not sure what it's called.
Is it Firefox?
No, it's not Firefox. No, it's one that I'd never heard of before. It's called something like Bear or something. I can look it up for you.
Okay.
And anyway, you just basically can, let's have a look. Alternative Mac browsers. Here we go. This'll do it. It's called Brave.
Brave. Okay.
Brave. So if you use Brave and you take Chrome off of your Mac, I guarantee your Mac will go much, much quicker, and you'll be able to use it just like you're using this one.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a fact. Just saying. It's a little tip. Just a small tip, because Carlo was having that problem, and this is how he kind of sorted it out, So, just saying. I think people don't realize that Chrome uses up an awful lot of resource, and it's just not optimized for the Mac, and so it kind of makes, it's just one of those. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called Brave, and it's actually made by Firefox.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's like a kind of public license, and
All
so
right.
that's how you get around the kind of problem of having a really slow computer.
Okay.
It's because I like to offer these free tips. It's
Oh
all
no, I
it's all part
welcome
of the
it. I
service.
welcome it. Amazing.
Yeah. So if you switch to Brave on Monday or whenever, I guarantee you're going to see big changes.
Ooh, all right. Can't wait.
Yeah,
Can't
you're very
wait.
sweet to say things like that. We were talking just before when I invited you back into this kind of crazy therapy space.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about kind of renewables and the fact that you could. Now is the time to make those changes that we're kind of asking for because of the war in Ukraine or because of the chip shortage, or see what I mean? It's like, what's it going to take to kind of push people to make change? And if a kind of gas price is going through the roof is not the time, then when is? That was the question, really. I posed it to the people, but the people don't care so much. I mean, Sky's just joined us, Wesley as well, Rustic Badger, Flashy Rooster, Violet Mule, Paul, and Proper Cuckoo. Wonderful to know. The names are getting increasingly more bewildering.
Yes, very creative.
It's a wonderful thing. Since I saw you last, I've already downloaded your dad's podcast, by the way.
I'm going to tell him that. I'm going to call him after this and tell him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very kind.
Well, yeah, I mean, he looks very sweet as well. I feel like I might have met him, actually. I feel like I might have been introduced to him by my friend Mark. So you're going to have to ask him if that might have happened. But I actually think I might have met him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we do look very much alike.
Yeah, I can see that. Similar. Same headphones. That's just how it works. Okay, well, listen, thank you for everything. I'm going to talk about our kind of final moment, which is Deborah Sampson. We're going to go to Women's History Month.
Amazing. All right, see y'all later.
See you on the other side. Thank you, Sarah. So yes, we at the end of the show every week we kind of do, or every day we do this. We refer to an inspirational American. We've been combining Women's History Month with Black History Month. And celebrating women and black women especially. But we're today going to talk about Deborah Sampson, who was born in 1760 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And she was one of 7 children to Jonathan Sampson Jr., Deborah Sampson. Both were descendants of preeminent pilgrims. And the Sampsons struggled financially after Jonathan failed to return from a sea voyage. His impoverished wife was forced to place her children in different households. 5 years later, at the age of 10, young Deborah was bound out as an indentured servant. And at 18, with her indenture completed, Sampson, who was self-educated, worked as a teacher during summer sessions in 1779 and 1780 as a weaver in winter. She actually disguised herself as a man in 1782 during the Revolutionary War and joined the 4th Massachusetts Regiment. Yeah, it's very interesting, how people, when we look through history, the lengths that some people have to go to kind of keep themselves out of harm's way and on track. And there's a lot of this kind of gender switching and shifting because men were treated differently, and so women disguising themselves as men was not an unusual thing. Ultimately, she became the first woman in America. She dressed in full military regalia and toured about her experiences because, fundamentally, she was, I think she kept her identity hidden. She joined the military and given the dangerous task of scouting neutral territory to assess British build-up of men and material in Manhattan. She and 2 sergeants led about 30 infantrymen on an expedition that ended with a confrontation with the British. And for some time her true identity was not discovered. When she received a gash in her forehead from a sword and was shot in her left thigh, she extracted the pistol ball herself. She was ultimately discovered a year and a half into her service in Philadelphia when she became ill during a pandemic, was taken to hospital and lost consciousness. She received honorable discharge in 1783 on October 23rd and returned to Massachusetts, and then married Benjamin Gannett. And in 1802 she began on this lecture tour about her experience. It's the first woman in America to do something, to dress in like full military regalia and to take on the identity of a man to escape her situation. And in fact, her husband, after her death at the age of 66, her husband petitioned Congress for pay as the spouse of a soldier, even though she enlisted under the wrong gender. The couple were not married at the time of her service, but in 1837 the committee concluded that the history of the Revolution furnished no other similar example of female heroism, fidelity, and courage, and he was awarded the money, though he died before receiving it. This is, again, the story of, women in history. And it makes me a bit sad that, women in history would have to disguise themselves as men in order to become historic. Do you know what I mean? I get it, and it's amazing. And, the fact that she fought in the war under this guise is very commendable. But it'd be nice if, men were left out of the story of women in history. Griffin's here, Towering Deer, Sky and Wesley and Rustic Badger. Thank you for joining us on Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. You have me just for another 10 minutes or so, and then your pal, Hal, will be here. And it'd be nice to chat to him in just a little while. I want to do a little update on some of the news that we might have kind of missed out on because, there was a lot of breaking stories earlier in the show. I think it's a good idea just to kind of point some of those out. So let's see where we got to. Oh, yes, this is the Supreme Court story. The messages from Clarence Thomas's wife released to the January 6th panel raise a conflict of interest concerns. And we talked about this at the beginning of the show. It's a very interesting thing. And on the Supreme Court, they're asking the question, who has more influence, Clarence Thomas or his activist wife? And then there's the story of the Senator Sheldon, what's his name? Sheldon Whitehouse, that's right. He's a Democrat representing Rhode Island since 2007, made weekly speeches called Time to Wake Up, urging the Senate to take action on the climate emergency. Well, he ended the weekly ritual once Joe Biden became president and Democrats took control of both houses of Congress. But now, with hopes of new climate legislation in shambles, the White House is back at it again. He said, I revived the speech series because I lost confidence in the momentum for climate solution, he said. He talked about Biden's stalled climate agenda, dark money influencing politics, and a future beyond fossil fuels. He says the Democratic Party has never taken climate change as seriously as it should. It has never put the energy into it that would create a public reaction of support that would then encourage more activity. And more specifically, we put all of our eggs in the basket of the big reconciliation bill and the belief that everything was going to be made right by that, to the extent we needed to keep the caucus together for that piece of legislation, So there we go. That's kind of an interesting story, isn't it? Let me move on to North Korea. That's right, it's Kim Jong. He's fired the biggest missile in history. Well, in his history anyway. He starred in a Hollywood-style video for Pyongyang's latest missile launch, and he was dressed in a leather jacket and aviator shades, and he doesn't look anything like Tom Cruise, funnily enough. Under Kim, North Korea sought to give its state media a makeover with digital effects, seeking more modern ways to tell its stories. Well, on Thursday, North Korea tested a huge intercontinental ballistic missile in a test Kim said was designed to demonstrate the might of its nuclear force and deter any U.S. military moves. State television broadcast a heavily produced video of the launch featuring flashy effects and edits. International online commentators compared the video of the movie Top Gun or the South Korean K-pop hit Gangnam Style, which I haven't seen for a long time and can barely say it. So the soundtrack quickens and the shot switches quickly between Kim and the officers looking at their watches before the leader takes off his sunglasses and nods somberly to start the missile moving to its launching position. This is the video. I mean, this is literally the video they've put out. A countdown begins, then one of Kim's aides screams fire in slow motion before a quick succession of shots show another soldier waving a flag and others gathered in the command trailer screaming as one pushes the launch button. I mean, this is insane. This is the enemy, you know? This is who Donald Trump became friends with. Loves a dictator, that man. The TV footage of the launch sparked memes and remixes online calling Kim Top Kim Jong-un, or referring to the video as Pyongyang Gang style. Kim previously found viral fame when he rode a white horse up the snowy slopes of North Korea's most sacred mountain. Anyway, I think the thing to be concerned about is that this missile, which is called the Hwasong 17, it's a giant ICBM. It was first unveiled 2 years ago, described as a monster missile by analysts. Well, it had never previously been successfully test-fired. And the launch prompted outrage from Pyongyang's neighbors and the US. I mean, this thing now can actually fire from North Korea all the way to mainland US. I mean, it has that capability. And he's fired missiles in January and February. I mean, the guy is he's getting a bit crazy about it all now. You know, it's almost as if he is, how would I describe it? It's almost as if he's like seeking attention. You know, he's not getting the attention that he deserves. And so by putting these gigantic missiles in the sky and testing them in a way that it's just going to draw more international attention to him. Misha's with us, Tyler and Sandra and Griffin. Welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony. It's the 25th of March. It's 10:47 here on the West Coast. It's 1:47 Eastern. And hopefully you're having some lunch or some breakfast or some brunch or a snack or an early afternoon tea. The other thing that was worthy of talk about in terms of the news, because there's been some, interesting news stories breaking in the last 24 hours that are worthy of a mention. An ice shelf about the size of Rome has completely collapsed in East Antarctica within days of record high temperatures. It's the Conga ice shelf, which has an approximate surface area of 1,200 square meters, collapsed around the 15th of March, scientists say. East Antarctica saw unusually high temperatures last week, with Concordia Station hitting a record temperature of minus 11.8 and more than 40 degrees centigrade warmer than seasonal norms. I mean, this is modern climate change, isn't it? This is where it's at now. We're basically going to see these huge shifts. And to have an ice sheet or an ice shelf or a glacier disappear like this, it might not, if you're not able to make the connection, it might not seem like much, but the reality is that this is a significant thing for rising sea levels because it keeps happening. And America is the second most polluting country in the world after China, and yet it's doing nothing about it. Nothing. I mean, literally nothing, Biden's going to have to put some executive orders in place just to kind of get some of these bills passed, because there's no way that he's going to get his climate change and social bill. I mean, why would you put social and climate together in the first place? It just seems like a silly thing to do. Just making the bill so big that the odds of getting it approved are minimal, seeing as that people just are very prejudiced about money in this country, you know? What was it Joe Manchin was saying that he wouldn't approve it because, you know, the cost was too much. And then they said to him, well, what price is the right price? And he was like, oh, I don't know, 2.4, 2.3. It's like, it's all about numbers. It's irrelevant as to what you can get for that money. Drives me crackers. Anyway, this is just something that has kind of become a bit of an issue for me. As you can probably tell, I'm kind of exorcising it as best I can. Just doing my best. Well, there's a story out of New Orleans today. It's about a little-known century-old ban on jazz in schools. I mean, this is crazy. This is the New Orleans Jazz Board. It's unanimously reversed a little known but century-old ban on jazz in schools in a city which played a huge role in developing jazz and where it is still played nightly at various venues. Isn't this weird? The board voted to encourage jazz music and dance in schools, a news release said. I mean, I can't believe that there would be a ban in the first place. It doesn't actually say why it was banned in the first place. Kind of weird, isn't it? They said, I'm very glad that we can rescind this policy. I want to acknowledge it. It was rooted in racism. The Orleans Parish School Board President, Olin Parker, said during the meeting on Thursday night, I also want to acknowledge the tremendous contributions from our students and especially our band directors, whose legacy continues from 1922 through present day. I mean, this is the crazy thing, isn't it? That racism really is at the very heart of a lot of decisions made by Americans, whether it be, I mean, even things like the abortion ban in Texas and Florida and, you know, elsewhere. It's like all of these decisions are steeped in racism because the white people invariably in these places can afford to privately, you know, get a termination. But it's the poorer communities, especially black and brown people, that can't. And it's just like, you know, telling people what to do. It's not freedom. It's nowhere near freedom and liberty. So this is something that, you know, I just find kind of endlessly fascinating. You know, the idea that the parties that are claiming that they are the party of freedom and giving people personal freedom are also the party of authoritarianism. And that's very worrying, isn't it? Misha, Tyler, Sandra, Griffin, Towering Deer, Sky, Wesley, Rustic Badger, Flashy Rooster, Violet Mule, and Paul and Proper Cuckoo, thank you for joining us today here on Backchannel. It's been an absolute pleasure. Legit Hummingbird as well, Hank and Obnoxious Armadillo, Sanya, Madeline, Fiery Tiger, Taddy, Strange Pigeon, Hampton, Rain, Fearful Horse, Laura and James, and Silly Penguin, and Lloyd. Thank you for spending your time with us. Oh, and Keisha, and Simple Chipmunk, and Maddox, and Stacey, of course, who was in first and often is. Appreciate you. Thank you for spending the day with us. You can stick around. You don't have to go. I'm going to go, but you can stick around because your pal Hal is going to be here, and he's going to bring you up to date with all of the fun and shenanigans, as he calls it, that's going on in the culture of populism. Popular culture is not something I'm particularly good at, so I'll leave it to Hal. He's your man. But anyway, he's next. Have yourself a really good Friday. Have a wonderful weekend as well. I'll come back on Monday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, and we'll do it all over again. Have yourself a really good day. Bye for now.